So today I'm going to teach you how to use a knife for self-defense by teaching you how to cut a pineapple. That's right, and it's not to be confused with Monty Python's self-defense against fresh fruit.
Right, now, self-defense. Tonight I shall be carrying on from where we got to last week, when I was showing you how to defend yourselves against anyone who attacks you armed with a piece of fresh fruit.
Oh. You promised we wouldn't do fruit this week.
What do you mean?
But seriously, there are some very important principles that I want to talk to you about, which I will go to in detail right after this session on how to cut a pineapple Tahitian style. So in this video, I mentioned 3 tips, and I want to give you a total of 2 more bonus tips for a total of 5 tips on how to use a knife for self-defense. Let me first start off with a very quick story. Early in my martial arts career, I had the opportunity to meet Masaki Hatsumi, Grandmaster of the Bujinkan from Japan, and when I met him, to a large group of over probably 300 people during a training seminar, he says to the group right before he gets ready to start the seminar, "I'm not here to teach you guys how to fight." Everybody kind of looks around confused, like, why are we here then? He says, like, "I'm here to teach you how to live." So with that kind of spirit in mind, I wanted to share these 5 tips with you. And of course I will save the best principle for last. But tip number 1, which was always use a sharp knife, right? That reminds me of Stephen Covey's habit number 7, which is to take time to sharpen the saw. And within that, in my personal opinion, there are 2 very important principles. One is the principle of preparation, and the other one is the principle of renewal. Okay, so for our very first bonus tip, I wanted to share that when I first cut open the pineapple and I saw that big brown spot, my first thought is, I can't show this on the video, but I just kept it in the video, and with the spirit of always being curious, always being willing to learn. One of my favorite quotes is there is no such thing as failure, only learning experiences. Okay, so now we're on to tip number 2. So tip number 2 is always use the right tool for the right job. As you notice, when I cut the top off, I used this type of a knife, and then when it came down to actually cutting around the pineapple, I used a boning knife because it has this kind of curvature to it, which allows me to get in and create different shapes, which are a lot easier than trying to use one of these big knives. You end up taking way too much meat off the pineapple, and it doesn't work very well. So when it comes to martial arts and teaching self-defense, there's so many different tools that are at your disposal. You know, you've got a fist, you've got an open palm, you've got elbows, you've got knees. One of the most devastating tools that you can use is actually your head. First and foremost is your brain and your ability to think, but just using your head as a weapon for headbutts. So now we're on to tip number 3, always cut away from yourself. I have a kind of an interesting story behind this one. When I was with my family and one of my best friends, we took our families and we went out and did some camping. And I thought I would be clever. I was a little bit of a newlywed at the time. I had my folding knife, which I carried on me. I saw this tree. And so I thought, oh, how romantic would it be if I carve a heart into the tree and put my initials and my wife's initials in there, and then I could show it to her. So I proceeded to take out my knife. I held on to the tree, and as I was carving and coming around, the knife slipped because I think it wasn't sharp enough, and so it slipped and it came across and cut my thumb wide open. You can see there's a big scar here. So, you know, I got that taken care of, whatnot, long story there, but after all, I got some stitches, and when I got home a few weeks later, and this is of course pre-internet, I was reading through Black Belt magazine, and I saw this ad, learn how to never cut yourself ever again. And I'm like, I need that, right? I need to know what that is. So, you know, just send $1. And so I put my dollar in an envelope and I sent it, and about 2 weeks later I get an envelope and I open it up, and there's a little slip of paper that says always cut away from yourself. And that was the tip that I paid a whole $1 for. So I'm giving it to you here for free today. But guess what? I never cut myself since that time. So that leads us to our very final tip, number 5, which is if you want to learn how to use a knife for self-defense, you first learn to just carry it, right? If you plan on carrying a folding knife, carry one, you know? Learn how to put it in your pocket, learn how to take it out, learn how to open it up, and just carry it and become familiar with it by using it, right? And obviously you're not going to go around slashing at people. So the best way to learn how to actually know how a knife works is to cut a pineapple, right? Or any other fresh fruit for that matter. So one of my favorite knives here is this Kershaw knife that I've been carrying around for a long time. And I'll put a link to that in the description. I'm not sponsored by them. It's just one of my favorites. I have probably 5 or 6, and this is the one that I always carry. I have 5 or 6 other brands, and this is my favorite. And it's just my favorite because it feels good in my hands, and I love how simple it is to open and to close. Right? Some of the other ones I have just don't have the same feeling. So I think it's a matter of personal preference, trying to find one that you like. I'll leave a description to this knife. Like I said, I'm not sponsored by, but if I'm totally honest, I probably, since I'm more of a handyman, I carry this more than I carry my Kershaw, which is just a Gerber folding razor blade, right? And so the reason why I like this is because it also can be used for self-defense, but it's much more practical for the things that I do, cutting open boxes, and you know, I also use it for a lot of sheetrocking and stuff like that. So it's just a little bit more practical for what I need it for, because I find that even though I study martial arts and self-defense, rarely do I ever need to defend myself, right? But I'm always needing a knife to open up boxes and to cut sheetrock and other things. So, you know, this is practical, and so it gets a lot more use. And also being a father of 5 children and a grandfather of 3 and almost 4, congratulations to me. My daughter-in-law is going to be delivering our 4th grandchild next week, so we got 1 week. But if I were to advise as a father and as a self-defense instructor for women to carry something, I would encourage them to carry a flashlight way before I would ever encourage them to carry a knife. A flashlight is so much more practical because, number one, most women don't feel like they're going to have the guts that it takes to actually slash someone open, right? But you can take this and smash somebody in the face, and it's a little bit kind of easier to get through mentally. So that's just my personal opinion. Once again, not sponsored by any of these companies. What I love is the J5 Tactical. I think this is the V1 model. I'll put the link in the description as well for this. But and please leave any comments. I would be happy to do a whole self-defense seminar on how to use one of these for self-defense and in more detail. But let me wrap things up with a true story. And this story is, I tell it in a lot more detail in another video called Courage and Self-Defense. So if you want, I'll leave the link for that after this video, and feel free to go watch that. But when I was younger and I witnessed a lot of domestic violence in my home, my stepfather against my mother, one day this lady named Rosette, who was a very close friend of my mom's, came and talked to me. And she told me, you know, Peter, when I was your age, and I was, I believe, 11 at the time when she told me this story, she said, I woke up in the middle of the night with my father abusing my mother. And because my mother had taught me how to use a kitchen knife, I went into the kitchen and she pulled out a knife and she pointed it straight at her father, and she said to him, if you touch my mother one more time, I will kill you. Sorry, I'm getting so emotional. But it's so powerful. So if you are a victim of any kind of domestic violence, you owe it to yourself to have the courage to stand up. You have the power to do that. I can't teach you courage, that has to come from within, but I know that you have it within you to stand up. And if you need assistance, I'll leave a number to a place that you can call to get the assistance that you need.